Hello and welcome to DRJ's webinar series. I'm John Seals from Disaster Recovery Journal. Today's webinar, let me make sure, I'm on the right. Today's webinar is sponsored by Recovery Point. We're diving into the topic, control over chaos. Before we get going, a few quick housekeeping notes. This session is being recorded and we'll share the recording with all of you tomorrow via an automated email. You're all in listen-only mode, but feel free to submit questions using the question panel within the GoToWebinar tool. We'll address as many as we can at the end of the session. Now let's get into today's topic, control over chaos, clean rooms, cyber resilience, and the future of recovery. Our speakers today are Jeff Judy and Matthew Goddard. Jeff has more than 2 decades of experience in architecture and administration with a particular focus on virtualized solutions. He designed, built, and deployed Recovery Point's cloud environments and has an extensive experience with a broad range of storage, replication, and backup technologies. Matthew brings more than 20 years of product management experience in cloud-based security and automated resilience and recovery solutions. He is the backbone of the technical infrastructure for the resiliency management platform and drives Recovery Point's flagship managed resiliency service offering. His attention to detail, oversight, and technical expertise has been the cornerstone of every client and channel partner engagement. Without further ado, I'll hand it over to Jeff to get things started.
Thanks, John. And hold on one sec, technical difficulty here. There we go. Thank you, John. And Matthew, good to see you.
You too, Jeff. We get started. I think, thanks for the intro, John. So just a little about who Recovery Point is. We're a pure play provider of disaster recovery and cyber resiliency services. And our core focus is to ensure that our clients' business will remain be able to recover when disaster strikes. And we do that by providing DRaaS expertise through service delivery and high availability architectures with backup and replication technologies and following security best practices, of course. And we implement those disaster recovery solutions that meet our clients' recovery time and recovery point objectives. We support platforms like IBM Mainframe, Power, AIX, x86, virtual, physical, right? The whole gamut, as well as running hybrid cloud solutions for DR and cyber resiliency. And lastly, we deliver all these services through our own bespoke Tier 3 data center. So, I mean, Jeff, you work with our clients every day implementing these best practices and the solutions that we've talked about. Can you set the stage for us so that we can all understand sort of the kind of chaos that you're seeing and how we can fight against it?
Sure. Thanks, Matthew. So effective cyber resilience is proactive measures before a breach, not reactive actions during it. And this statement can be applied to really all areas of our lives. So like Matthew, let me set a scenario for you. If you're taking your kids on a road trip, what would be some proactive tasks that you would do?
Oh, gee, with the kids. Making sure everyone's gone to the bathroom, everyone's dressed and have their the proper travel attire. I'd say checking Waze, GPS, making sure we know the route, making sure that we have gas in the car, things are in proper working condition. And I don't know, probably I hate being late for stuff, so probably leaving a little earlier than even that app says we should leave, just to make sure in case there was unexpected traffic or something.
Right, yeah. Like those are some proactive steps you can take, right? And they can make a huge difference when the unexpected occurs, whether you get a flat tire or there's an accident on the road or something like that. And it's the same thing with a cyber attack. Being proactive will have a huge impact on your ability to respond. It's often said it's not if or when, but it's really how often is your company going to be breached. Um, Cyber attacks are in the news daily. And even from my own experience, we had our local hospital, their emergency room services were knocked offline this past January. So everybody's impacted in some way. And every company today is really a digital company. Every company has some form of dependency on technology. So it's critical for organizations to have a robust recovery strategy in place. The key to mitigating damage and ensuring that your business can survive lies in your organization's ability to recover critical data quickly and effectively. So, data is, you can consider it the lifeblood of your company, and if you lose access to it, your business stops. So how long can you survive, not running your business functions before the business just has to stop being in existence? So the most important proactive measures that you can take is to ensure that you have recoverable data. That's a lot about what we're going to focus on here today. We work with companies at all different stages of cyber resilience planning. Some are just getting started, and others are, firmly established in the resiliency plan. So in the past 2 years, really, I've seen an increase in clients that are implementing secondary recovery plans. So many times a company will implement a primary solution that is based on replication technologies, so they can recover quickly and have a very aggressive recovery point objective. But now they're implementing plans that have to test secondary approaches where they're recovering from their backups, and also into a clean room environment, which is a slide we'll get into in a bit as well. Also, clients are now conducting incident response tabletop exercises, and that's whereby they're setting up a gaming scenario to run through different scenarios with their teams, and then analyzing the responses from their teams to improve the incident response plans. Because a lot of times when you run through those scenarios, you're not you may, but you're typically not sitting truly around a table, but you're just in a meeting talking through scenarios about how a breach might happen, and what is your team expected to do. And a lot of times it'll surface that a team doesn't have a clear plan or have actionable things that they're assigned to, or that they're aware that they need to take responsibility for. So go to the next slide. So these are important changes to make to your disaster recovery program, because the response to a ransomware attack requires a multifaceted approach. Really, cyber attacks have brought an evolution to what used to be a traditional disaster recovery. Matthew, can you guess where cyber attacks rank as disaster recovery events?
Well, it's got to be nowadays like top 3, 2.
It's number 1.
Oh.
They are number 1 these days. And really, if you look at the slide, you have unpredictability of the event. In a traditional DR, yes, you have fires, you have earthquakes, but you can see a flood coming, you can see a hurricane coming, and you have operational resiliency within the data center to be able to survive certain events. But a ransomware attack is unpredictable. It can pop up at any time, multiple times. Maybe you survive the attack and then they come back at you a second or a third time. You have to deal with data encryption and then extortion on top of that. And there's time sensitivity and then additional threat mitigation and removal techniques that you have to take in place. So a key piece to cyber resiliency is establishing partnerships with providers that have experience, that they're in your cyber resiliency incident response plan, like your MSSPs, your managed security service providers. They're typically running services at the point of attack, during an attack, and they have a better understanding of the attack vectors and how to respond. Your resiliency plan needs to be in place, because the bad guys, they're going to come for your backups. We've seen it firsthand where a company's attacked. They deleted all of their backups, and then they launched the encryption wave of the attack. We had logging where we could see that they tried to delete the remote copies of their backups, but they were luckily immutable, so we were able to recover them. Testing and validating the recovery plan so you can quickly recover. So you got to realize that don't fall into the trap that if you have a set of backups, even if they're immutable, that you're able to recover. It doesn't mean you can recover in like 10 minutes. you have to do certain things that we'll get into a little bit with workflows, like is the backup clean? What point in time and where do you recover to? And what are the additional tools and capabilities that you'll need to reduce downtime and perform the recovery? So, this slide just kind of tells you, in a sense, like there's dwell time that you have to deal with, and that's where attackers may be lurking. They could be in there for weeks, even a month or two, unnoticed inside of your systems before they launch an attack. If your data is encrypted with successful ransomware attacks, including your backups, you have to have a plan for what do you do next? How do you respond to that? With the sensitivity of time and extortion, a lot of times, if they've encrypted your systems, taken control of them, you'll get that ransomware note, and it's a time-sensitive pressure situation. They're like, pay the ransom, or we'll encrypt more of your systems and more of your data, or with the data we've exfiltrated, we'll release it. So there's all sorts of different things that you have to deal with in regards to a ransomware scenario of a disaster. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to the basics of building a good resiliency plan. And we like to reference the National Institute of Standards and Technology. They've published a framework that provides a very easy, clear way to understand what your cyber resiliency program should look like. It's a great way to get started. Now, if you notice in the center of that circle, there's a piece for governance, and that's probably the most critical part of building a resiliency plan, because it's the driving force that's going to build a successful program. You must have executive leadership buy-in and guidance. And then obviously Recovery Point delivers services at each one of these phases of identify, protect, detect, respond, and recover. So, and with the next slide, we'll take you into a little bit more of our approach to building a resiliency plan. So we have 3 phases or pillars here: preparation, recovery, and remediation. And then throughout that is 6 detailed steps. Preparation is the most critical of all the steps, because if you do it right, you'll save yourself and your team the most valuable commodity on the market today, at least in my world, is time. Your implementation testing and when responding to a cyber attack, time is of the essence and it's critical. I've seen companies come in with poor disaster recovery plans, and they'll spend a week testing, and a DR test plan is never a failure, because there's always things you can learn from and improve upon. But, from a sense of trying to get a certain amount of systems application recovered, they failed. And then there's companies that come in that have a well-planned, well-designed solution in place. Their objective may be 3 days, but they can get it all done in 1 day. So you can imagine the amount of time you can save your team by completing your DR testing in a day, and the confidence that you build when you do have a true disaster. So preparation involves the discovery of assets, applications, understanding the risks to the business should one of them become unrecoverable, and then building the dependencies between all of those systems, and understanding that there could be negative ripple effects if a system downstream actually crashes or has some type of outage. How does it affect the rest of your business functions? Once you formalize that type of risk amongst your applications and systems, you can define your recovery time objectives and your recovery point objectives. And usually you're going to assign the most aggressive solutions around your most critical mission applications, give them a tier 1 assignment. After risk acceptance levels are put in place, your disaster recovery team, you'll have clear objectives to guide the solution design. And you should have a high level of confidence in the expectations that your executive team's expectations of what you're building and what you're investing time and money in is actually the reality of what the solution delivers. Another big part of preparation is testing your disaster recovery plan. And you can adjust it based on test results and make the adjustments to be ready for your cyber recovery. So main part of the cyber recovery is knowing that you have good backups. And Matthew's going to take us through. Matthew, talk to us about backup validation.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Jeff. So as Jeff's mentioned, it all starts with that preparation piece, right? Having a recovery point to go back to is only one aspect of it. Veeam actually is recently introduced, for example, their data resiliency maturity model, so DRMM. And that helps an organization measure their resilience practices against a number of factors that we're talking about today. It's a great framework to start reviewing and try to start to bring these pieces together. But really, like step one, right, is take those backups. And we laugh sometimes, but you need the backups to be able to recover from them. We can't recover from something we don't have. And as Jeff was talking about, the backup infrastructure itself is also going to be attacked. I mean, there's a good reason that one of the first things that our opponents go after during a cyber event is those backups, because you're more likely to pay money the less likely you are to be able to restore and recover on your own. So they're going to try to prevent that at all costs. Right? So making sure those backups are happening, right, frequently as needed. And then following into that, the offsite immutable copy. So following our 3-2-1-10 rules of backups to keeping them protected, making sure that copies are offsite on a different media. This is critical foundation step for making sure that they are protected and separated from our production infrastructure. And of course, having them immutable, meaning that they can't be altered after the fact of being saved. So these are kind of our table stakes, right, when it comes to making sure that our data is going to be there when we need it. That takes us to sort of some of our next more advanced steps. So extra protection where possible. We talked about these layered approaches to the protection. So during the actual backup process is a great place to start looking at that. Starting at the source, for example, and again, Veeam has some great malware detection tools that are monitoring file system activity, ransomware signatures, etc., as a part of the backup process that it's performing. And it will notify you when it's discovered something questionable. So you can already have security devices at the edge, right? But if something slips through before a signature perhaps was pushed and detected, this layered approach means that we can still catch things later on in the process. So it's a great complement to already existing security platforms that you might have in place. After we've taken the backups, we've moved them to that other offsite media storage and stuff, of course, we want to make sure that they're still good and healthy. And traditionally, the best way to know for sure is to actually do the restore from it and, going through that whole process. And you know what? That really is still the case, right? And that's why, at Recovery Point, we do ongoing testing of our clients' backups with a combination of full restoration, scanning, as well as the data validation piece. And of course, none of this really matters if you don't have a way to report on the findings or the various metrics, which ultimately can lead to us knowing if remediation is required or not. And it's that kind of restoration and remediation process that leads us into the idea of clean rooms from a recovery perspective. Because of these new uncertainties around the cleanliness of the data. Jeff, again, you're working with our clients every day in this regard. Can you take us through what makes up a clean room and how our clients are using them today?
Yeah, definitely. The clean room, it's what it says on the slide. It's a space that allows for a comprehensive testing of your cyber resiliency and disaster recovery plans. It's an offline set of infrastructure. It also allows for forensics teams to come in and run their analysis of infected systems, to determine what the extent of the attack is. And it's all in an isolated environment. So it's critical for verifying that you have clean backups. So when you're running through that backup process or backup restoration process, this is the way to do it. It's not, but clean rooms are not only for data recovery; they're also for the analysis part of it, and it gives you that added layer of assurance. Recovery testing can be expensive, and it can get complex. And so, with Recovery Point, you don't have to make that investment in dedicated infrastructure because we have all of the infrastructure you're going to need to build out a clean room environment. So we deploy that. We'll work with you on the configurations, and then we deploy the infrastructure from our pool of resources. I was talking to Scott, our Chief Information Security Officer, Scott Williams, and I was like, hey, with the clean room, what's your top incident response tool? Because the clean room is, an isolated set of infrastructure. Nothing can communicate in or out or up or down. And he gave me some good knowledge, because he said, really, it's initially like your incident response team needs to step in. In his case, he said, I would use Sentinel-1 as the tool of choice here. And he's like, initially, the goal is really during an attack or a breach, it's for containment and micro-segmentation of your systems on the production side. You may have to seize physical systems, take them offline, clone them, put them on a dedicated hypervisor in the clean room, and then make sure that they're built out on an isolated or separated network. And he said that in the cloud, it's a similar situation. So if it's not a private cloud set of infrastructure that we're building, and say it's a public cloud like Azure or AWS, is still a similar situation in that you're going to build a sandbox tenant to bring those systems back online. And then you can use your security incident and event monitoring logging systems, which you should all have in place. That's basically the centralized log, pulling in all of the logs from all systems, that it can be analyzed and determined what's been infected, what was breached, and when was the breach. So you can take that logging information, and it'll help you to pinpoint what time frame do you need to start to begin your restoration from. So you can say, oh, this happened last night last night just before midnight. So if I go back to my backup the previous day, at least I'm at a point where I'm not encrypted. I may still be infected, but the systems might still be usable. Part of the solution is to have a workflow in place so that all of the teams are rowing in the same direction. All of your incident responders have that plan to follow. So this slide right here, now, it's not a one size fits all. This is just an example of what you can put in place for a cyber resiliency recovery process. But it is important to know what to recover per instance, and if that instance is clean. So in this example, we're looking at a virtual machine, and it's just virtual machine number 1. And you've got copy A, B, and C, right? And copy A is from a backup from 4 hours ago. And you can take a look at it and say, that is encrypted, so it's pretty much useless to me. Look at copy B, that's 3 days ago, and it's determined that it's infected but not encrypted, so it may be useful. Copy C is from 2 weeks ago. Unfortunately, you have to go that far back, but it's clean. So you do have a good copy to use, but you're going to lose 2 weeks of data if you have to use it. So at that point, you can use the workflow, and your teams can make a determination on what's the best path forward here. Or you can do multiple pronged approach. So let's bring up copy 3 and copy 2. And then hopefully you can recover copy 2, so you're only going to lose a day or two of data from that. Because RPO is important. If your only restore point is from 90 days ago, how much data have you lost? And what's the kind of impact to your business that would have on it? Another part of this that's important is reporting quickly and accurately. So people want to know what systems were infected and what is the closest point I can recover to. So if you've got a plan in place and you're able to report efficiently, accurately on, where's the damage, what's the blast radius, and how far back do I have to go in time, people, leadership teams can make decisions based on that information and move quickly. And then another part you have to remember here is once you start to move through this workflow, you must scan, because it's dangerous if you recover the wrong stuff and you've done a bunch of work, working night and day, and you don't check it, because you'll reinfect the entire process, the whole system. So what we've covered so far, I would determine are the basics of a cyber resiliency program. But Matthew, what are some ways that you can take cyber resiliency to the next level?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So when we talk about sort of more advanced tooling and controlling of the process, right, we talked about testing is always going to be the best form of test, proving that we're protected and ready for an event. But we know, there's a lot of moving parts. And because we do this 24/7, right, we recognize that having tools to assist in that recovery work and flow and test is the only way to really be able to scale and coordinate all the components and the people involved. And so a product like Recovery Point's Resiliency Console can help manage that recovery process across multiple platforms and technologies and people. In a clean room example that Jeff gave, right? Multiple restorations could be occurring at the same time. By using these tools, we get faster recovery times, reduced data loss, and greater operational continuity during any kind of disruption. So, basic steps cover things like restoration of the backups themselves to the targets, right? But going beyond those restorations, we can do also more advanced steps like performing configuration changes as well needed on the systems themselves after they've been recovered. Systems requiring IP address changes when they come online, validating databases, web applications, right? Making sure they started correctly. All kinds of activities that today may be done manually by individuals within the organization. So having all your people, process, and technologies incorporated is key, and having all that information in sort of the same format is a significant part of improving resilience. And using the orchestration pieces to help bridge those process gaps between IT departments and security teams is invaluable. And this, of course, all helps to reduce those recovery times and human error by having a repeatable, deterministic process take care of the recovery for you. And because we use the tool and the process for all of the testing, like ultimately, it's the exact same process that will be used during an actual event declaration. And so if it works in testing, it's going to work during the real life thing. Another super important part of the tool is understanding the dependencies of the servers and the applications, right? Again, this is critical to making sure that restoration and the validation testing can happen properly and will be successful. There's so many dependencies these days, right, for our applications, both internal and external, from a source perspective that need to be considered. And a lot are easily forgotten or missed, honestly. The easy ones are things like, my database needs to be online before the web server, right? Or making sure that the correct services are started. But the harder ones are not quite apparent on the surface, but can definitely be the difference between something working as expected or not. So Active Directory, for example, even if apps are using local accounts, many services or APIs require centralized authentication. And if that's not there, nothing's going to work. Your data could be perfect, right? You did the backup, you did the restore, thumbs up across the board and green lights, everything's working as corrected, but it's those dependencies that are stopping the success of that environment from being able to further process your client and users information. Or how about this one? A few months ago, right, something that comes to mind, we had a client that was recovering their application. It wasn't working. They did it multiple times following the process that Jeff was outlining, and thinking that the application was corrupt. And in fact, it all stemmed from their NTP server, right? Starting some services. Some system time was just outside of the tolerances allowed, and so nothing was started or working. Obviously, something small from a technical perspective, but large impact because of that dependency that the application had. So making sure these kinds of checks and balances are defined within the scope of the recovery is key. And using a tool like the Resiliency Console means everyone's working with the same set of information and following the same process. So with that, Jeff, can you take us through how to then use the information that we're outputting and sort of what kind of visibility that our clients have to this whole process?
Certainly. Some of what you're going to get out of the Resiliency Console is dashboarding and reporting. And certainly when you're in the middle of a disaster, a dashboard is a pretty handy tool to have. You can check your metrics, where you are in your recovery processes. And you can ensure that the recovery is on schedule. Check that your teams are on schedule with their progress, with their individual progress. And you can do this in real time. And then it also allows you to provide status reports to the leadership team so that everybody's on the same page again with the recovery process. But another part of this, really, that metrics play another critical role, is they are your key performance indicators. So they'll show you that your recovery architecture, your investments in disaster recovery are truly driving real financial savings. When you're informing your leadership team, you can use these metrics, these reports, to show the potential hours of downtime and the cost to the businesses versus a real financial savings from setting up a quality resilience program and producing positive outcomes during your DR testing cycles. Metrics can ensure that the recovery plan works and that your expectations are in line with reality of what the business needs, and that you're meeting. Many companies have regulatory compliance requirements as well, so these reports add that as a deliverable too. And another big part of it is that you'll find the gaps in your recovery solution as you work through your DR testing. These types of metrics and reports help to build awareness across all teams, and it's going to drive your governance towards better approaches for resiliency. Another thing that is out there today, that having a data-based collection of data points here for your recovery processes across all systems, all applications, how long did things take, is in the future you'll have AI-driven resilience solutions. And these models are going to need to be informed by these types of metrics. So the more that you can feed those AI models over time, giving that the right data will be key to be able to allow AI to kind of take over and build a more resilient solution for you. So Matthew, what's our next step?
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. So yeah, in terms of where we go from here, I'll let everyone know that following the event, everyone will receive our Cleanroom ebook, which covers topics we've discussed today, including step-by-step breakdown of how you can leverage Cleanrooms to protect critical systems against ransomware. And we're also offering a complimentary ransomware readiness discovery session. And during this session, we'll work with you to evaluate your current preparedness and risk profile, and then we'll sort of guide you through an assessment of potential gaps and vulnerabilities in your current recovery strategy. And you can schedule your session through the QR code on the slide, but we'll also include a link in the follow-up emails following today's event. So I think with that, we'll pass it back to you, John, and help maybe coordinate some questions, and we'll have some answers, I think, as well.
Okay. Yeah, we have first question here. How does Recovery Point implement clean recovery service for their clients, and how do you ensure physical separation from production systems?
Yeah, that's great. I'll start that off with just because of our bespoke tier 3 data center, right? We're easily a secondary or tertiary to our clients' already potentially existing disaster recovery plans and scenarios. So there's already inherent physical separation and geographical as well in that regard.
Okay. Do recommendations change dependent upon data protection strategy chosen by an organization?
Yeah, well, I can take that one. Yes. So say the risk to your business is that you could recover from a 2-week-old backup. So your solution's going to be drastically different from a company that's dependent on a transactional point of sale system that it has to be online 24 hours a day. So the two recovery solutions will be highly different, and obviously our recommendations on the approach for building out types of solutions would change based on the RPO and RTO requirements.
Okay.
And I would just add to that, too, there is no one size fits all, and that's why we're very much used to dealing with clients in very complex environments where there's different requirements at each tier and for the different platforms. And so we approach each of those with its own guidelines around RPOs, RTOs, et cetera.
Yeah, that's true. Many companies have different tiers of recovery, and we can blend solutions.
Okay. How do organizations prioritize their response efforts following a ransomware attack, especially when dealing with data loss, system downtime, or financial implications?
Well, prioritizing your response is based on, again, on the risks to your business. And that's going to be built into your response plan. So, you would, the critical systems, mission critical applications that your company depends on would most likely be your main focus as far as recovery processes. There's certain other actions that are motions that are happening at the same time, as far as like a response team to the ransomware attack, authorities trying to check if there's been exfiltration of data, things like that have to happen. But as far as the recovery process, you'll prioritize what's mission critical to your business.
And we also suggest, as a terms of testing, when we're working with our clients, to take those different scenarios into account as a part of the test plan. So things that outside of the data itself, like what happens if your email isn't available, right? How is your internal teams going to communicate to go through said recovery steps and plans? So all of that also is used as input into that prioritization.
Yeah, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but kind of expand on this. What are some of the latest trends in ransomware attacks, and how can organizations stay ahead of the curve?
So I would start with obviously things that we've now seen where, from a cyber event perspective, it's much easier for people to discover vulnerabilities. And so companies aren't being targeted, they're just being discovered, right, by things sweeping across the internet, looking for vulnerabilities. So always having a blended approach first within the production environment for protection is always initially helpful. And I think I spoke about those multiple layers of scanning and validation, and that's from a production perspective, but also from the backup perspective. Because you want to, even though something wasn't discovered day 0, day 1, right? The signatures might come out day 2 when that piece of code is already sitting on the systems, and you want to be able to still detect and be aware that it's there so that you can take the appropriate steps.
And you mentioned the importance of DR testing. How many times a year would you recommend a company conduct a DR test?
Our recommendation is at least 4 times a year, run quarterly. A big part of what we see is companies don't keep up with change control. And what that means is oftentimes, technicians, engineers will implement changes, add new systems, take systems out of your production environment, and the disaster recovery plan never gets updated. And so companies that wait 12 months between tests are not truly recoverable. There's many systems and applications that have changed over time. And when you go to restore or recover those systems 12 months later, it doesn't work.
Are there any metrics or data points of delivery improvement by having this automation in our environment?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say from just looking at it from a man hours perspective, right, as well as just improvements in RTO times, a lot less hands-on keyboards are needed, right, to run through that process. As well, if you have, four people recovering, working through 50 systems, and in your environment, 45 of them are just always fine. They, come up without issue. Well, you can have the team focus on the problem areas, or the areas maybe that are require more handholding, right? And let the automation system and process work on the systems that are coming up just fine. And so right then, being able to do more work in parallel rather than in series has a huge impact on then the times in terms of the start to finish for those types of events.
Yeah. And back to the slide about the reporting on metrics, those key performance indicators that you're collecting over time and then you're able to report on can show the value of the solution that you put in place and the time investment that you've made into the resiliency program.
Okay. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to add?
I would just say, I mean, from a last words perspective, I would say make sure you have those dependencies documented. We see so many problems with our clients because of those small what starts as a small hiccup and ends up having a large impact. So that would be my takeaway.
Yeah, document the plan. I would say make sure that you're recoverable from your backups. It's a critical piece to a ransomware attack. That's your last line of defense. So make sure that you can restore those things.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today. We hope you've gained valuable insights from this webinar. A special thanks to Jeff and Matthew for sharing their expertise and to Recovery Point for sponsoring this session. Tomorrow, we'll email everyone a link to the recording. Feel free to rewatch or share it with your colleagues. If you have any follow-up questions, don't hesitate to reach out to Disaster Recovery Journal.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.